Well, hey everybody. Let me get my chair in the right spot here. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the first day of December 2022. Well, here we are in a new month. Yay. I don't know. I got to do bills, so maybe not so yay. I hope everybody's doing well. We had an interesting reading Monday. Uh, did I do with? Oh, here we go. We had three major cards: the Magician, the Tower, and Strength. We had Othala for the Elder Futhark rune, the above side, and Acquisitio on the below side. Excuse me. I have to have some tea here. The illness we got in October, it's hanging on. It drives me crazy. Anyway, we also had on Tuesday, I read we went over the daily forecast for Tuesday, talking about the 11th month. 29 reduces to 11, and then you've got the 20, which can reduce to 2, and the 22, which anytime there are master numbers, I don't reduce them. Some might just add them all together and come up with a number, but I don't do that. Not when you've got that higher type of energy, higher awareness energy associated with those numbers. And 11, 22, and 33 are three that we see all the time, with 11 being illumination and awakening, spirituality, all of that. 22 being the cosmic builder, so profound soul level change that can take place. And then 33 would be Christ consciousness. And so you see that progression. You become awakened. You understand more the bigger perspective of things. You then manifest differently, and then you achieve Christ consciousness. You achieve that level of higher awareness where you function there, and that's a tough one, obviously, for everyone to try to. To try to have embody in their awareness, but it's the progression of those numbers which I find interesting. And so we had 11, 11, and then 22 were the master numbers for Tuesday. And on Tuesday it was about awakening to the idea of a misuse of force, either from yourself or from somebody else, or some bigger entity other than yourself. Where you really start to awaken to what that truth is, and to understand its impact on your life. And I don't know if today's reading is going to build on all of that or not, but let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the influences for today, the daily forecast. With the 1st of December, you're looking at for a 1, you're looking at 1 energy. Hagalaz was the rune that I had drawn for that day, for today, and Laetitia is the Geomancy rune I drew. So Hagalaz is dealing with, with 1, it's new beginnings and leadership and talent and things like that. Hagalaz is transformation within a fixed structure. So it's not necessarily throwing out your fundamental beliefs, but it's taking a look at things in a bigger way, again, which can be part of that whole, because I think we had Nathiz, and Isa was on Monday, Nathiz was on Tuesday, and here we are on Thursday. We have Haglas. So we've got the 3 Norn runes this week, influencing, and that's of the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark. I view the Norn runes as maybe having a little more power, a little more higher awareness than the other ones do, and kind of the goddess presence within, suggesting, well, there's another way of seeing things. And so with Hagalaz, you're it's a transformative type of a rune. It's the rune of the past. It's known as the witch rune. And if you think about it in terms of witchcraft, you're looking at seeking to transform something in a positive way. And so that's probably why it's called the witch rune, but or some people do anyway. Laetitia is about joy and fellowship, and it's a positive rune. And so the transformation that can then transform your daily life into something that's a little bit more joyful and positive. So I think that let's take a look at what I came up with, though. You intuitively know when your leadership is required, and you willingly step up when the need arises. You're ready to make any adjustments necessary to see things from a different perspective, and your imagination motivates you to explore new ideas and experiences and then share them with others. Your influence on others is based on a selfless attitude and leads you to making decisions based on the overall need instead of a personal agenda. And your choices reflect a common shared interest that also reflects discipline and a focus on details. So I would say that out of what we talked about on I don't know what I did, but it's right there on Monday regarding the magician, the tower, and strength. Um, that's a lot of that. We had a bunch of transformative kinds of things in terms of our perceptions, and with the 11 and 22 numerology on that was most specific on Tuesday. We're looking at invoking our will in a different way. We're looking at allowing the balance to return, to transform our awareness, and then result in maybe an inner strength, taming the wild within with the strength, the card of strength. You're really looking at the idea of taming the wild within and seeing things from a higher perspective. The three major cards to begin with signal that these are soul archetype cards, the majors are, and so they're going to have a little bit different focus and weight perhaps than the rest of the tarot cards and the suits will give you. Those are literally the details of our lives, whereas the major arcana talks about the overall soul archetype issues that we deal with. And I think that this is a time of transformation. Just this whole year has been, and now we're into the last month of the year, and Yule is coming, Christmas is coming, all of that. The holidays are still here. This is a time for transformation anyway, and either that happens or it doesn't. But it just seems like if you let your higher awareness take the wheel instead of reacting with ego all the time, then I think you have a better chance of seeing the overall perspective of something that maybe is less self-oriented, and maybe a little more about what's the nature of life and who are we and all of that, and can we maybe start heading in that direction versus staying down in the mud with things that really aren't getting us anywhere. They're not making people happy. They're not reuniting families. They're not, it's that sort of thing, that coming back together in the fundamental unity that we all are. So it just seems like on Monday, looking forward a little bit, it just seems like it was all dovetailing together, maybe. I don't know if that's how you feel about it. But let's go ahead and draw a rune. And let me move this out of the way here. Let's draw a rune and see what we have for the above side of things to start us out with. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks so much for coming by. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back, join our little tarot and rune family here. I like to just look at these things in terms of influences. I'm not really so much about predictions. I think that there's just way too many variables involved in that. I mean, it might come true, but anybody can change their mind on the path, and so that'll just totally mess everything up. But I just think that it's valuable to think about other ways of seeing things. So here we have Ansus. Now, Ansus is thought to be Odin's rune by some. It's about again, it's like Laetitia from the Geomancy room for today from the daily forecast. You're looking at fellowship and joy. You're looking also at communication and clarity, a higher level of that, a higher self-awareness sort of invoked into all of that. But basically it's the divine message. It's the spiritual divine message. It's the divinity within, maybe, and how you communicate that to other people. But let's take a look at the Geomancy rune. We'll throw down the elemental runes and see what we come up with. Oh, well, that's all populous. So I've got 2 dots on both, so that's populous. It's the complement to Vaya. Vaya would be single dots going down. This is dual dots going down. Fire, air, water, and earth. This is passive influence. So you're looking at, instead of with Vaya, it would be yourself on the individual path. This is following along with the crowd. So now that's either going to be a good thing or a bad thing. It could also indicate dropping resistance, which is oftentimes a good thing, and seeing where the flow takes you. But again, if it has to do with the people, or because that's specifically what it is, people, crowd, all of that, follower. If that's what you're doing, depending on, what that looks like. Are you following along with the collective consciousness? Well, okay. If you recognize yourself as part of that, well, that's good. But if you don't, then this could be following along with a crowd that maybe is taking you in a direction you don't need to go. And whereas Ansus would be suggesting, the divine clarity within can help guide that process a little bit, I think, and see if it can elevate you in a way that is not going to be beholden to something that really is not going in a positive direction. All too often we get hung up on a crowd that we're with, and maybe we lose ourselves. We lose our identity to the crowd, to the group. And you lose your autonomy, you lose your sense of self, and suddenly you find yourself doing things, our mothers always said this growing up, right? You have to be careful of the friends you have, because maybe they're going to get you in trouble. And so we all know that from childhood. So maybe we think about that today, bringing divine clarity in terms of our message, in terms of how we interact with other people, how we communicate with what are we communicating? Are we trying to bring others along with us, maybe on something that is positive and higher awareness space, or are we trying to influence them with ego and appeal to their egos? That's not really a good thing typically. So that's the significator for the reading. We'll see what the cards have to say, if they're going to dovetail with all of that, or if they're just going to go their own way. But I've done some shuffling already, so I don't need to do very much here. I'll just do a couple. And then we'll go ahead and take the first 3 cards. If we need more, we'll take them. Typically, we can get away with just 3, but we'll see. Well, 2 cards from the Major Arcana and a pity party with 4. I don't know. The first time, when I was getting into tarot years and years ago, I would look at the cards and I would I was studying, right? But to see what what they actually mean and all of that, or what the generally accepted interpretations are and all that. But I would also have these hits, right? It's like the 7 of Swords always hit me as theft of intellectual property. Well, it's more than that, but that's one of the hits I had. And the Tower was, okay, this isn't what all it looks like. And the Death card, not all it looks like. It's like, okay, something else is going on here. And mostly it was transformation, right? But this one always said to me, pity party. I can't, you have a love is being offered. If you look at the cups in terms of the water element, love is part of that. Change is also part of that. Momentum, compassion, balance, things like that. Emotion, but it's emotions, right? And so you've got this guy who's literally in a defensive posture. He's not looking at what's being offered, the cup that's being offered, the unseen hand from the cloud, which there's, you see that in all the aces. And you'll see it in a couple of the other cards in the minor arcana. But here you have that sort of thing. He's got his back up against this tree, this oak tree, and he's not really looking at the three chalices in front of him, and he can't see this one. So it's like he's all wrapped up in himself. He's all wrapped up in whatever emotions are happening to him. And he's, you can see it's like the whole thing in psychology. When you sit there and you're like this, you're in a defensive posture, possibly. Not always, but especially if in therapy you're trying to deal with something that's difficult, it's not uncommon for the client to sit there and cross their arms, or maybe cross their legs too, because it's a self-defense posture, right? It's when you start looking at someone's body language, you can see certain things when they don't look you in the eye, when they cross their arms, they cross their legs. It's like, okay, this person's really defensive. They're probably not going to tell me the truth, so I'm going to have to work at it to get what I really want to know, right? To get the answers I need to have. Well, that's what I see with this. And to me, it just seems pity party. He can't see beyond the emotions that he has, right? Although 4 is about structure and foundation and you look at it in terms of in witchcraft, you look at the 4 quarters, they're boundaries, right? Well, he may feel that his boundaries have been impacted, and he's upset, and he can't see, especially with the card where it's the hand is reaching out with it from the clouds. He can't see even unknown things that are coming that could possibly help the situation. He just can't see it. You see, even here, his garment that he's wearing looks like it's in an X pattern. So again, it's like, stop, don't come near me. I don't want to engage here. So something's going on where he's either having to just say, okay, everything stop. I need to reevaluate what's going on and try to figure out where I really stand emotionally with on something. How do I really feel about something? And so again, if this is relating to populace, maybe he's gotten into a flow with others that on the whole is unsatisfying. And maybe he's realized that he's been pulled into something maybe that he really emotionally cannot handle. And he needs to redefine maybe what that emotional balance looks like for him. And that, in other words, restructure it. And so that's where I think the 4 comes into play here. So the 4 of Cups. Next, we have the Chariot, another card of balance. Now, you see that with the 7, the 7th card of the major arcana. 7 is about observation. It's about balance, legal issues, magic, spirituality. But it's letting it. But I view the 7 as, and I'll show you why, as a card of coming to rest. So letting things come to rest, like he's doing here with the 4. So I find the 4 and the 7 to be related in that regard. But if you look at the scales, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You got 7 asterisks there, right? That's my ridiculous. I don't draw. Okay, I'm not an artist that way. So don't laugh. Anyway, or do, whatever. But I know I can remember my oldest boy, he'd get this, he's like his dad that way. He gets this look on his face, and usually that's when my husband begins pacing, especially just on the phone, and people aren't hearing him. They're being, ridiculous or whatever. He'll get this look on his face. He'll start pacing, back and forth. But our oldest son is like, well, and I guess the youngest one kind of is too, but the oldest one would get a look on his face like, Mom, what is that you just drew? It's like not even definable. I have to explain it. It's like, oh, okay. But anyway, you're looking at coming to rest, and here that's what the king has done in his chariot. You look at the 2 little well, this is dark and light. Basically, you're bringing your polarities into balance here. You see the dreidel standing up in balance on the shield here. You see the winged sun, basically. So some healing is taking place, healing of that, of rebalance and all of that, centering and all of that. You see the two towers here. Anytime you see two of anything, whether they're two trees or two cliffs, or where you've got like a pathway going in between, there's a feeling of balance there in the tarot. You look at the two wheels here. You look at the glyph for Earth here, the square on his breastplate. You see his crown with stars here. You see stars which are actually Merkabahs up on top of the drape, on top of his chariot. But he's holding his scepter in one hand, and the other hand in this rendition has nothing in it. You see the implication of maiden and crone, and if you looked at this as mother, even though it's because it's kind of a shape like that. So you see the balanced triplicity. The Chariot is an interesting card. It's about movement, it's about mastery, but it's also about knowing when to surrender and when to take control. And here, he's not holding the reins. Everything is at rest. Everything is at balance. And so he's in his receptive presence, basically. He's letting everything come to balance before moving any further. And in a very real sense, that's what's happening here. I mean, if you want to ignore the pity party aspect of it, if you want to look at this in a positive way, even though he doesn't seem willing to accept what's being offered, he's still thinking. I mean, he may ultimately accept this. We don't know. But at this juncture, he's letting everything come to rest. He's not letting anything else influence what he needs to think about and what he needs to figure out there emotionally. And with the Chariot, basically the same kind of thing. The Chariot is also, if you look at it in terms of the Merkaba, it's the soul vehicle. And so this really tells you that in terms of higher awareness can get you in that place of observation where you let things, the situation, whatever you're dealing with, come to a rest. When it's still active, it's very difficult to make a decision about what you need to do. So if this is regarding, say, an issue of communication with others, then maybe emotionally you're having a difficult time with that. You're having a struggle, and you need to get clear. And that's what Ansus is suggesting. You need to get a higher perspective and to figure out what's really going on here. If say there's an argument happening between you and your family or whatever, maybe there really isn't an argument. Maybe it's just emotions are at the surface and lots of things are going on and people are freaking out about this or that. And then somehow or another it affects the group. Well, if everybody just lets everything come to a rest, maybe there's really nothing at all going on. And maybe the conflict or the drama, maybe that goes away on its own. And so you don't have to butt heads with one another, especially at a time where maybe people are feeling emotionally vulnerable. And it just kind of feels like maybe that's what this is going on here with this guy. Maybe he's feeling emotionally vulnerable about one thing or another. Maybe there's some group aspect to that where things are just not clear. And so he's going to get away from it all and allow things to come to a rest, as well as with the Chariot, and let higher awareness come in and say, okay, what's really going on here? And am I seeing this from the right perspective? Does it in other words, does it help for me to respond emotionally to it, or should I sit back and wait for more information, right? Enter the star, our hopes and wishes. This is the 17th card of the major arcana, reduces to 8. And so you have inner strength again here. And again, you're looking at hopes, wishes, transformation. You see the goddess in her nude form pouring water into the pool and onto the land. She's got one foot in the water, one knee on the ground. There's a tree with a bird on it right there. And you'll see this same sort of deal in tarot, where you'll see a large, in this case, a large star that's worth 10, and then you've got 7 here, in kind of a funny balance, right? You see some mountains in the background, but the idea is that you're talking about being optimistic and about gaining insight. And where you're going to get that, you're going to get that from higher awareness. So you're getting insight, you're getting inspiration. And so if you let things come to a rest, if you let in this case, your emotions come to a rest, and allow yourself to just let things settle out and see what's really going on here. 7 and 4 is 12, or 7 4 is not 12, 11. So you're looking at a master number there, and then 8. But if you did that, that'd be 19. That'd be still back. That'd come back to 1. So new beginnings. You need to start over again. I'm looking at the numerology of the cards, trying to add in my head, which I can't do. But if you have 11 and then 8, that's what, 19, and 1 and 9 is 10, which reduces to 1. So that's new beginnings, leadership, talent, invoking something new. Perhaps you're accustomed to responding emotionally to things that maybe if you would allow the whole situation to come to a rest, or even just your emotions to come to a rest, you would be able to see things with a little more clarity, the clarity that Ansu's, and communicate that clarity that Ansu's is asking us to communicate and to invoke in our lives. Instead of just simply going along with the flow, going along with the crowd, going along with the group that wants to, get into it with each other. Maybe you step back and this is just too much. I need to have some space. I need to think about things. I need to let my emotions, I'm feeling emotional, I need to have that come to a rest. And we see that not only in the 4, but also with the 7th card of the major arcana, the Chariot. So not only on a body level, a form level, a physical form level, but also in a higher awareness level, it's clear that in order to get a little higher level of clarity, again, that's another interpretation of Ansu's, to get that level of wisdom, I need to let everything come to a rest. I need to drop resistance, step back, don't let anything else come in, and just keep your own counsel and figure out what's really going on. Do I need to respond? Do I need to just wait for more information? And then know what your hopes are, know what your wishes are. Get that insight, that higher awareness insight, so that you can find the balance that you're looking for, because that's really what the star is also doing here. It's not just inspiration, it's not just a higher awareness here. It's about gaining that insight that you need to truly understand what you need to do. How do you need to respond? And when things settle out, maybe it's just individual stressors that we're bringing, and then you come together in a group. Maybe Thanksgiving was volatile, and so maybe you're still trying to figure out what the heck happened there. People come together and they bring their stresses with them, and maybe that happened, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on, and but you need more information, and you shouldn't judge it until you have that. It could just be just one of those moments where all those stresses clashed. That's all. And there's nothing permanent that happened, even though maybe people were angry and left or whatever. Give everybody a chance to go to their own corner. That's another aspect of this, I think. Let them go to their own corner and figure out what what it is that was causing them to feel as emotional as they were feeling and to react the way they did. Maybe something, it's like when something hits you wrong. It's really just your frame of reference at the moment, your mindset at the moment, your emotional mindset, if you will, the emotions that you're feeling. Um, Maybe your emotion set. Maybe that's a new descriptor there. uh, I don't know. I think that we're really dealing with having to take a step back these days in our personal lives and try to understand the greater picture of things. A lot of things don't make sense. Things that uh, uh, people believe don't make sense. That they act on, it doesn't make sense, especially when people are harmed in the process. Um, they don't seem to think about, they're so caught up in that moment, and it's all emotional, and they don't really think in terms of what's going to be the fallout, what's the impact on other people. And if you're not that person, if you're on the receiving end of it, you have to figure out, okay, what do I do? What do I say to this? And you can always say, you can use the, I need time to process this. I'll get back to you, give me some time to think about this. And you can always do that. You don't have to answer somebody right away. You can always say, look, I need to think about this for a while. Give me some time and I'll get back to you. And when I'm ready to talk to you about this. But you've given me a lot to think about, and I just need a little time for that. And I think that that's really what maybe the underlying message of the reading is, so that you can then respond in a way that's based on a higher level of wisdom. Maybe what people or someone is asking you to respond to, maybe they've not thought it through, you see. And it's like when somebody decides that you think a certain way about something and you don't. It's like, what do? Do you start arguing with them? Well, no, I don't think that way. Oh, yes, you do. You get into that back and forth nonsense, and nobody gets anywhere. Uh, and so, in a very real sense, I've gotten to the point where when someone does that, I just don't respond to them. I just don't respond. It's like, well, okay. See, Eckhart Tolle has this way of saying, so you say. Uh, and it puts it back on the person, and most of the time they don't even realize that that's what he's done, but it's like, okay, you've said that, but that doesn't make it true. But he doesn't say any of that. He just comes back with, so you say. And if you think about that, it's like, well, yeah, that's what I said, but it doesn't mean that you're right. Right. It means that's your perspective. And we can get into, and sometimes there's a difference between perspective and truth, maybe. They can be reading into someone else's behavior and not really, understand what the behavior is. And so his attitude is just say, so you say. And I don't know. I can't really say those. That doesn't fit with me. But so I just don't say anything at all. I don't even respond to them, and I wait to see. Okay, is anything going to change? And you hope it does, because otherwise, you're like, well, now you got something to think about and a decision to make. But at the same time, a lot of it just passes, and it's just a moment. And if you give it too much air, if you give it too much life, if you make it too real, then it becomes real. It becomes the reality between you. And maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe if you're not responding to that person and what they're saying, it's like, oh, okay, I hear what you're saying, Or maybe you don't even say that. It's like, okay. Or it'll drive them even a little more crazy if you just sit there and you don't say anything at all. And if they say something like, well, aren't you going to say anything? I'm like, no. This is you're sharing this, but thank you for sharing. You don't have to accept someone else's view of you as being true, especially if it's not. And it's like, well, okay, you're really reading into things that you shouldn't be reading into. And again, it can cause you to, gives you pause, basically, like the guy in the Four of Cups is doing, and then realizing that he has to get clear. He has to have some level of clarity. In order to do that, everything's got to settle out. And then maybe you find a way to manifest your hopes and dreams about it all, and you get a higher level of insight that you can then, either choose to express to that person or not. Um, but again, I think maybe with populists, then it's do you get caught up in the emotion of the moment? Do you get caught up in whatever's happening in the group, or do you keep your own counsel and really when you look at the four powers of the witch, you're looking at they're aligned with the different elements, and to know, to dare, to will, to keep silent or keep your silence. Um, we don't keep our silence enough. That's associated with the earth element. Well, so's the four. So even though this is a card of the water element, four itself is structure, it's earthy. And so I think that we don't do that enough, and maybe that's something that's needed here today over the next few days. If you experience something like this, or maybe Thanksgiving was volatile or what have you, maybe you just keep your own counsel and you wait for more information, and you don't judge the situation. Again, if it was a shouting match of you did this and you did this, and you're this way or you're that way, it's like, let me step back. I can't be in this conversation. You can do that. So, and I just think it's the idea of keeping your own counsel, and knowing what you know, and if there's a specific thing that you did that you need to apologize for, then do that. But otherwise, perception's a funny thing. It's not necessarily truth, but by golly, we each think it is. Don't we? I mean, that's kind of what happens. It's like, no, this is true. It's like, no, I don't think so. But they see it that way, and until they see it differently, you're just kind of stuck, and you don't have to be. You can just step back and say, well, I'll leave you with all that. So, well, that's interesting. Thank goodness we didn't have a court card to mess everything up. So, uh, but again, it's like with today's esoteric influences, you intuitively know when your leadership is required, and when you just need to kind of go, yeah, I'm gonna go sit over here, or maybe I'll go home. So anyway, we ran a little long today. Thanks so much for watching, and just give if this resonates for you today over the next couple of days, great. If not, just kind of keep it in mind that you have more choices than you realize, and it's fine to just sit back and regroup, and to give yourself that space to do it, so you can figure out really how you feel about things, and so that you can then, if you do need to respond, you can do it with eloquence. That's another aspect of Ansu's eloquence, but it's a higher level of eloquence, non-judgmental and all of that. So have a good weekend, and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.